I'm a high school dropout. Once upon a time, I was a teacher in college. I was not a professor, but just a teacher in an all-girls college. And I did that for 5 years. I was a teacher in an all-girls college for 5 years until I got fired. Now, at the time, I was teaching photojournalism, of which I've already had a collective experience of around 15 years in both advertising and print media. Plus, I also earned my Master Photography distinction along with 15 other Filipino photographers. So I was teaching in an all-girls college. I was teaching photojournalism, of which I've had a collective experience of 15 years. And I was fired. Fired because the administration discovered that I did not even finish high school. But despite the lack of a formal education, I was writing my notes on the blackboard from the top of my head. Modesty aside, I spoke better English and wrote better English than any of the English professors around, especially those with a PhD. So I was teaching for 5 years, then I was fired. Fired because I was doing my job well. Why is that? Why? Because I had no formal education to back me up. That, to my mind, is the problem with the world today. Even in my field, in the EMS, I know of a lot of people with all the certificates. And I'm talking about that piece of paper. Maraming taong nasa hanap buhay na ito na puro papel ang hawak at puro papel din ang laman ng utak. And I guess it's the same anywhere you go. Ang daming instructor na panayalantad ng may certificate ako, may certificate, pero nagkukulang sa gawa. Ang daming tao na summa cum laude at summan con mangga. Marami ring taong nag-aaral lang para makapasa. That, to my mind, is where the problem lies. Ang daming estudyante na ang hangad lang sa eskwelahan ay makapasa. So, whenever I teach, tinatanong ko na kagad yung mga estudyante ko. Kung gusto nyo maka-perfect sa exam, ako na lang ang sasagot para perfect lahat. Pero kung gusto nyong maging, kung anong gusto nyong maging, then that will be the only thing on your mind. For example, anyone who wants to be a doctor, a lawyer, an architect, or an engineer needs to want it. It's not enough na makapasa ka ng bar, makapasa ka ng board. And whenever I share my knowledge with first responders, tinatanong ko sa kanila, anong gusto nyo? Anong expectation nyo sa klase na ito? Someone will say, sir, gusto kong makapasa. O sige, pasado ka na. Sabihin naman ng isa, sir, gusto kong makatapos. Sige, tapos ka na. First day pa lang, tapos ka na. Why? Because ang bababaw ng pag-iisip ng mga estudyante ngayon. They're so focused on passing an exam, filling out all the blanks. They're so concerned with the process. And the educational system is so bent on following a certain set of metrics that were not meant for the student to learn. Instead, the metrics were meant to be there for the students to be compliant. Ginagawa lang silang masunurin. Pero yung matuto, hindi nila kayang gawin. And I guess I have to open up this topic simply because we've been discussing instructors. So both from the instructor side and the student side, maraming instructor na puro papel lang ang hawak. Pero kulang na kulang sa gawa. Meron naman mga estudyante na ayaw matuto pero gustong pumasa. And that's a really big problem. For example, I've heard an instructor say na, kung gusto nyong makontrol yung recoil ng 9mm, mag-practice kayo sa 45. It's like saying, kung gusto mong matutong mag-drive ng Vios, mag-practice ka muna sa bus o kaya sa articulated vehicle. It's a warped kind of logic na hindi ko talaga maintindihan with some people. When I was taking my EMT class, an instructor said, hindi ako papasa dahil ang background ko daw ay media. Malaman-laman ko nung sumasampa na ako ng ambulansya. At kaya ako nag-survive is precisely because of my media background. Bakit? Dahil sa medical field, kailangan magaling ka magtanong. And that I learned from being a reporter. Tanong ka ng tanong. Kailangan alam mo ang mga tamang tanong. You don't need to know the right answer. You have to know the right question. And yung sinabihan na ako pa ang hindi kakayanin ang EMT. Sa lahat namin magkakaklase, ako lang ang namumukod tangi na sumasampa na ambulansya because I wanted it so bad. I wanted to become an EMT so bad. And that's what got me through. Yung hirap ng training, yung hours, the life and death situations that you get into if you don't have the dedication, hindi ka talaga magso-survive. You can know all the medical terms, but at the end of the day, ang kailangan mo lang gawin ay dalhin ang pasyente papunta ng ospital na buhay sana. And that's it. And that's what people don't get. They're so stuck up on the process na hindi nila naiisip na kailangan gustuhin nila ang isang bagay para makuha nila. It's all the same, whether it's firearms, whether it's medical training, whether it's engineering. I'm a high school dropout. Hindi ako nag-graduate ng journalism, but I served a good 2 decades in the private media and in government. How many people can do that? And that's just part of my story. The real lesson here is I dropped out of high school because I was a bad student. I made it through EMT class because I was a good learner. That's been the long and the short of it. This has been Absabando for Manila Sentinel. Raw, be a good learner.